Today, we are talking protein and the new dietary guidelines. So, this should be pretty quick, but there was a big change here in the protein part of it, in the protein world from the old guidelines. So, let's talk about it because I hear a lot of protein's dangerous. I shouldn't eat too much protein. I've heard that we eat too much protein. But if protein was actually dangerous, humans wouldn't have survived long enough to invent Facebook. Okay, so there's that. In fact, it was protein that had really made human brains capable of doing what they do today. So if you've been told you eat too much protein, or protein hurts your kidneys, or protein is only for bodybuilders, or that plant protein is automatically superior, you're not wrong for being confused about these new guidelines and why they changed. But I'm going to just say the guidelines are not inventing a new idea. They are not trying to kill you. They are just taking a look at a lot of data that's out there and catching up with what we know about human physiology. Okay? So, and honestly, been caught up with what I've been teaching because a lot of times when I'm working with a client and I run through the nutrition calculator for that takes into account age and height and weight and goals and activity level and all of the things. Most of the time, the what is coming out the other end is much higher than the old guidelines and very much in line with the current new guidelines. This is what Precision Nutrition, who is the certifying or credentialing organization that I have gotten my Master Health Coaching credentials through, has taught for years as well. So most of the women I work with are not overeating protein. They are not stressing their kidneys and they're not eating too much meat. In fact, what's actually often happening is they're not eating enough protein. When we look at the day, it's a very, very small amount. They're often struggling with fatigue frequently throughout the day. Um, as we are talking about women who are over 40 most of the time, not everybody in this group is female or over 40, but that's most of my clients, if not all of, even though they're not all of them. Losing muscle, which is very frequently going to happen in perimenopause and menopause when we're not actively trying to build muscle. Hungry all the time or having cravings and blaming carbohydrates, sugar addictions, hormones, or willpower on all of that. And so today, I really just want to walk through what the guidelines are actually saying, why this aligns with how I've been teaching, why your protein needs are higher than the old RDA, and how I personally make protein easy, flexible, and kind of fun in my life. And maybe that will, be something from there that you can take away for yourself. So the new guidelines aren't treating protein like a side dish. They're actually treating it like a metabolic anchor. And in fact, it is. So the new guidelines are 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. They said body weight. Some people suggest it's your ideal body weight. So if you are, 175 pounds, but your healthy body weight would be 150, then you can choose to use the 150. That is completely acceptable method. It does, either way, it's fine. Um, so the old guideline though was half that, basically zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram a day. Now, how does that translate to your body weight? If you're 150 pounds, you divide that by 2.2. So that would be 68 kilograms. And so the old guidelines would say you would need 54 grams of protein, and the new guidelines would say that you need at least 81 grams of protein. So there's a big difference there. It's an extra 30 grams of protein a day, which is about, roughly 4 ounces of chicken. It's not a huge amount. Um, And we do get protein in a lot of sneaky places, but we're not necessarily talking about all of those extra little places. We're talking about high quality um, protein sources that are similar to what our physiological makeup requires. So the RDA, the old guideline, was really never meant to help you thrive. It was really meant to answer how much protein do you need to not get sick? This is different. It wasn't asking how much protein do you need for supporting your energetic processes, for muscle preservation, for blood sugar stability, for stress resilience, for aging well, for mental health, right? Um, those are very different questions. Your brain, everything in your body is ultimately in some way, shape, or form reliant on protein. And so we need to bring that in. Um, Precision nutrition, for example, has never taught that RDA as an optimal target, but that protein needs depend on your body size, your activity level, your age, your stress load, recovery demands, your gut health, even. Um, and so the precision nutrition ranges, depending on who you are, often go from 1.2 grams per kilogram to 2.2, which is actually higher than the RDA because you may actually, if you're a bodybuilder or something like that, you would want more. Um, And looking at per meal protein, because it's a little easier to look at your plate and say, hey, what do I have for protein on this plate right now? It's a lot easier to keep in your head or do it right in that moment than think about, oh, how much protein did I get this week? Or how much protein did I get today? And trying to do all that math in your head. And then looking at protein quality and not just how much it weighs, how many grams of protein. So, um, here's the simplest way to think about protein, I think. You don't really store much of it. You store fat. You can store a little bit of carbohydrate in the form of glycogen or sugar. But protein is constantly being broken down and rebuilt. It builds your neurotransmitters, I was saying. That's for your focus and your mood. It builds enzymes for your metabolism. It builds immune cells for your immune resilience. It builds muscle and bone. Your bone is 50% protein. That's important for metabolic health and aging well. And it also triggers satiety hormones, so you have fewer cravings. In fact, protein is the biggest driver of satiety or satisfaction or the feeling of fullness or doneness when you're eating. So if you've eaten and you've given yourself a good 20 minutes of just thoughtful, restful, mindful digestion and eating, and you've got protein on your plate and you've got some veggies on your plate, and you eat that protein and fiber stuff first before other things, you're going to find that you're more satisfied. Every single client that I've worked with who starts doing this has said, I stopped snacking. I didn't even realize it, but I'm not snacking. I'm just not hungry. It's, it feels like magic, but it's not. Um, so that is exactly why low protein often looks like in our lives like constant snacking, energy crashes, um, healthy eating that never is satisfying, right? Because we're often trying to reduce calories overall, and we're trying to reduce, fat and those types of things, and we're just not getting enough building blocks or nutrients in our bodies. And then you can also end up with muscle loss during weight loss because instead of changing uh, the kinds of foods you're eating to be more of whole food and more looking at that protein and those vegetables first, um, and you're just cutting everything across the board, you're going to lose some of that muscle instead of just fat. So that's why eating protein is protective during fat loss, and it helps your body lose fat without throwing away that muscle and without ruining that metabolic baseline, that basal metabolic rate. So, what does this look like in real life? Okay. For me, my game is I try not to eat the same protein for dinner 2 days in a row. And that's just me. Now, people like batch cooking, or they might have a couple of dinners 2 days in a row that are the same. I mean, that's totally your own preference. But for me, I like to make it different every day. So, I don't tell clients to eat chicken breast forever because and I don't do it. I don't believe in protein monotony or anything. So if there's allergies or things like that involved, I mean, clearly it's going to be different for you. But I make a game of protein variety. I think in themes. I have an egg-based night for nights where my oldest daughter is working and not eating dinner with us. A crustless quiche, or where I add a high protein cottage cheese in there and maybe a little bit of bone broth or protein powder to go along with it because egg by itself isn't high protein. Um, because two eggs alone is just 12 grams of protein. So that's also an easy add-on. So maybe I'm having something for lunch and I just throw on a couple of hard-boiled eggs, or maybe I make some deviled eggs. I might have a legume or lentil night where I use sprouted green lentils and hemp heart soups in a bone broth, or edamame mung bean pasta, which I really love because it has the same mouthfeel as regular pasta, and I don't, and it's not a refined grain; it's a whole grain. There's literally two ingredients in it. It's my favorite. There's a I treat beans as sort of complements, not this sole protein if they're on, they're usually a carbohydrate if I'm having them with meat. But in these lentils or edamame mung bean pasta nights are my main protein night. I might have a soup night. It's always got a bone broth base unless it's chili, when my husband makes that. Um, and usually we'll have a chicken night, and I'll have a fish night, and I'll have a pork night. I'll have a beef night, a steak night, or something. It depends on what I get in my meat share, but I just try to mix it up. Then I know I'm not getting too much of anything. I'm getting a wide range and variety of nutrients in that way, and my mouth doesn't get bored. Um, one thing that the new guidelines do say out loud, and I mentioned it in the last video, but I'll say it again in context of protein, that if someone has an exclusively plant-based diet, the guidelines explicitly note that certain supplements are required and not optional. So this includes vitamin B12, oftentimes iron, sometimes zinc, sometimes omega-3s. Often omega-3s are necessary, and in some cases iodine and calcium. And that's just simply for the basic fact that plant proteins are generally less bioavailable and they don't have all of the nutrients that we would find more prevalently in animal-based proteins. It's just is. It's okay. Some of those essential nutrients are absent or they're just poorly absorbed in those forms, such as non-heme iron, um, that may be in a plant, but that is harder to extract. And so you may need more volume or more calories to meet your protein needs on those on a fully plant-based diet. So all that just means there is that you require a little bit more intentional planning, which is okay. It's totally possible. Um, and I love that the new guidelines are just honest about it. If you eat this way, here's what you must account for. And it's just being honest, getting rid of the ideology and just saying, let's make you thrive. Let's help you thrive the way you choose to eat. I think that's beautiful. So let's get to how much protein you need because this is probably one of the most common questions I get asked, um, which is um, going to be dependent. And so you might want a number, and I'm not going to necessarily give you a number, but it does depend on your height, your ideal body weight. You could use your current weight, or if they're very, very close, you can certainly do that. Your age, your activity level, your gut health. And I say that in terms of how well are you able to digest your protein. So the kind of protein you eat may matter in that case, or if you've got other issues in your gut that are causing your body to not handle protein well. So those would have to get adjusted, and you might need to have a lower level until those are taken care of. It's not common, but it's there. Whether you're healing, training, stressed, or fasting all matter, right? If you're healing a lot from a surgery, you might actually need more protein in your body because um, your body's doing some extra work. You're asking it to do some overtime work. But I can say with confidence that your protein needs are higher than the old RDA. That RDA really only answered, again, I mentioned it before, how much protein do you need not to get sick? And I like the question, how much protein do you need to feel strong, clear-headed, resilient, and satisfied, and energetic, um, and clear thinking? So that's the real difference, I think, between surviving and thriving. Um, so if you feel like you've been struggling with fatigue, hunger, muscle loss, stalled progress, you might want to take a look at your protein. And if you're not sure, um, if you're getting enough, you can always do an essential health assessment with me. I'm more than happy to do that. It's free. Um, and that's available to you as as part of this group, and being in my world. So the good news is this is not an extreme change in the sense of turning your world upside down. It's not a trend either. And it doesn't require perfection. In fact, you don't want to go from a very, very low protein diet to suddenly a very high protein diet because your body has to adjust over time to get used to this new way of eating. I joke, we're kind of like dogs. You don't just change a dog's diet from one type of dog food to another. You ease them over, right? Um, so yeah, when you're doing a massive change in a diet, whether it be adding more fiber or adding more protein or adding more fat, especially, all of those things you have to do in small increments because your body's digestive system's been used to working in one way, and now you're getting it ramped back up again. It just give it some time to adjust. That's all I would have to say there. So what does a nice, foundational way of eating look like? It's enough protein, enough variety, and real food. And so I'm just happy that the science and the guidelines and coaching are finally in better alignment. So if you have any questions about protein, um, I'd love to hear them. Put them in the comments. If you want some ideas for protein, if you've got recipes you'd like to share, I would just invite you to do that. If you're interested in the essential health assessment, just comment health, right? I'll send you over the link. It's very easy. I don't bite. So anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful day and happy Wednesday. Take care.